Hello and welcome everyone. Today, we will explore together the incredible story of Jonathan James, a young 15-year-old hacker who went to school in the morning and hacked into NASA and Pentagon servers for fun in the evening. Here is the fabulous tale of this young computer hacker with an extraordinary destiny. Let's get started. Jonathan James was born on December 12, 1983, in the charming little village of Pinecrest, located in Miami-Dade County, Florida. The young boy would fall into the world of computing at an early age, as he was only 6 years old when he began using his father's computer to play video games. Little Jonathan spent so much time in front of the monitor that his parents quickly became worried about him. His father, who was a computer scientist by profession, did not want his young son to tire his eyes out in front of the screen. Therefore, he decided to set some restrictions on the use of the PC, drastically limiting his access and usage time. But the young boy managed to sneak around, and as soon as his parents turned their backs or were occupied with something, he would rush to the computer to indulge in his favorite hobby. Little Jonathan always had the last word, and did not hesitate to use his natural charisma with his parents to sweet-talk them and let him play video games. As he grew up, the young boy's interest in the video game world gradually decreased, but to his parents' dismay, Jonathan replaced video games with computer programming. Little Jonathan had discovered a deep passion for the C programming language and spent his days creating small software programs. His father was even astonished one day to discover that his personal computer had been converted from the Windows operating system to the Linux operating system. It was actually the young boy who had made this change, solely to test Linux and understand how it worked. This obviously irritated his father to no end, as he feared that professional data might have been lost during this operating system change. However, upon checking his files, he discovered that his son had taken the care to back up the system before installing Linux. Little Jonathan got off with just a warning this time, but he would soon attract his parents' wrath again. Exasperated by seeing him constantly behind his screen, they finally decided to confiscate his computer. The young teenager then threw a massive tantrum and ran away from home, threatening never to return as long as he didn't have his PC. Faced with the apparent distress of his parents, who didn't want to see him run away from home and endanger himself on the streets, Jonathan was in a position of strength. Especially since he demonstrated to them that his passion for computing had no negative impact on his schooling, since he had very good grades in all subjects. Indeed, no one could deny the excellent results of the teenager, who had an academic record worthy of a gifted child. These impressively good results immediately reassured Jonathan's parents, because with such grades, they could only be happy and proud of him. The teenager thus gained his parents' trust, but no one could guess then that he had simply cheated, using computer hacking. Jonathan had indeed managed to break into the network of educational establishments in Miami-Dade County, and thus was able to change all his grades right under the noses of his teachers and instructors. This was, to say the least, Jonathan James' very first hacking operation, who had already chosen the pseudonym C0MRAD to identify himself in the small community of computer hackers. Jonathan spent most of his time in front of his computers, deepening and perfecting his knowledge of hacking every day, and forming relationships with hackers all over the world. The nickname C0MRAD began to become more and more recurrent in forums and other hacker discussions, and the budding hacker was gaining influence and notoriety. It must be said that it is the spirit of absolute competitiveness that primarily motivates hackers, each wanting to show the others that they are the best and that they can hack even the most secure sites. It was precisely this competition that would push Jonathan to want to excel in hacking, and to not want to settle for hacking his high school servers. At the age of 15, the young hacker dreamed of seeing his nickname listed among the world's best hackers, and to do so, he would have to target much bigger fish. He therefore decided to take action directly, by hacking into the servers of AT&T BellSouth, one of the largest telecommunications companies at the time in the United States. But even though he could have easily diverted money or stolen crucial information, Jonathan James was content just to bypass security systems so he could boast about it later. After this masterfully executed feat, C0MRAD knew that he could hack into the most secure servers without any problems. Thus, in June 1999, the young hacker managed to infiltrate one of the servers of one of the most powerful governmental agencies in the United States, NASA, by easily bypassing all its firewalls. The network hacked by C0 actually belonged to the Marshall Space Flight Center, located in Huntsville, Alabama, and which was considered one of the most important units of NASA. Indeed, it was there that rocket engines were developed and tested, as well as communication systems for the ISS, the International Space Station. COMRAD thus gained access to the source code of an ultra-sensitive program, which controlled the survival elements on board the ISS, specifically the temperature and humidity of the ambient air. This system, valued at several $1 million, was supposed to be inviolable, but not for Jonathan James, since he managed to break into it as easily as if it were a shopping center. It took NASA security experts several days to discover the intrusion and attempt to remedy it, by literally disconnecting their servers and the compromised computers for a duration of 3 weeks. NASA thus lost about $40,000 due to this hack, but fortunately for it and the ISS, the system was not impacted and suffered no damage. Indeed, C0 had only accessed the servers and machines to prove his hacking skills, and his intentions were obviously not malicious. But NASA and the FBI did not share this view, as this successful intrusion was perceived as a serious breach of state security. The FBI therefore deployed significant resources to try to track down this dangerous hacker, without suspecting in the least that they were dealing with a mere 15-year-old high school student. Jonathan James, on his part, saw his popularity soar among the geek community, and his pseudonym, C0 now sat at the same table as the world's greatest hackers. Yet, this was not enough for him, as his ambition was such that he wanted to be the king of pirates, the one who could break into the most secure place on the planet, the Pentagon. Penetrating the heart of the world's most powerful military was an enticing challenge for all hackers, but no one had ever done it, and so it was considered an impossible mission. But C0 did not know the word impossible, and in September 1999, he was simply going to make the impossible possible. The young teenager had indeed managed to detect a backdoor on one of the Pentagon's servers, which was located in Dulles, Virginia. COMRAD infiltrated it almost immediately, and in less time than it takes to say it, he had already installed a spyware that could intercept all network traffic passing through the server, including login IDs and passwords. The hacked server was part of the DTRA for Defense Threat Reduction Agency, a division considered vital to the U.S. Department of Defense, whose role was to analyze external threats against the country's national security. Thanks to his hacking skills, C0 managed to intercept a multitude of user identification data, both military and civilian, thus allowing him access to dozens of Department of Defense computers. In just a few minutes, Jonathan James was able to download tens of thousands of highly confidential emails from personnel working for the Pentagon. This was the very first successful intrusion into the Pentagon's networks, a historic first. COMRAD could finally boast of being the world's #1 hacker, but alas, he would not be able to savor this victory for long, as the FBI was waiting for him around the corner. In January of the year 2000, federal agents arrived at his family home and proceeded to arrest the young teenager. They also seized 4 PCs, a laptop, and a handheld computer as evidence. Despite his minor status, Jonathan James would appear before the judge and plead guilty to hacking NASA and the Pentagon. Nevertheless, the court took into account the fact that Jonathan had not caused damage to the servers he had hacked, which clearly indicated the absence of malicious intent on his part. The young hacker would ultimately receive a mere 6-month house arrest sentence, along with a formal prohibition from using a computer for entertainment purposes. Unfortunately for him, the 16-year-old teen would eventually violate the terms of his house arrest, and he would then be incarcerated in a juvenile detention center. This was the first time in the judicial history of the United States that a minor served a prison sentence for a computer-related and hacking offense. Upon his release, Jonathan vowed to stay as far away from hacking as possible and to lead a simple life with his parents in the peaceful family home. But alas, this happiness would not last forever, as Jonathan's old demons would eventually catch up with him. In 2007, the Secret Service conducted an investigation into a dangerous gang of cyber criminals, and quickly the name of Jonathan James became suspect. The investigators indeed believed that the young man was linked in one way or another to the hackers they were tracking, which was enough in their eyes to conduct a search of his home, as well as that of his brother and girlfriend. It would later turn out that the Secret Service had been mistaken about him, and that Jonathan James was completely innocent and free of all suspicion. It could have ended there, but unfortunately, that is not the case, as the young man, eaten up by despair and the fear of ending up in prison despite his innocence, would ultimately take his own life.